The sky above Earth was on fire. Flames reached from the ground to the heavens as alien warships hung over the cities like hungry beasts. The invasion had lasted only 3 weeks, but for humanity, it felt like the end of time. The Galactic Empire had arrived, a force so powerful that even the strongest human weapons were useless against it. Lasers rained down, oceans boiled, and the once bright blue planet turned red with ash and sorrow. Inside the underground command center of the United Earth Council, the air was heavy with smoke and despair. Screens flickered with reports of lost colonies, fallen armies, and dead leaders. But among the chaos, one man still stood tall, Ambassador Reed Carter. He was not a soldier, not a general, but a diplomat known for his calm voice and sharp mind. Everyone said he was foolish to stay behind when the evacuation ships left for Mars. But Reed had one rule. Humans never run from what they created. As the bunker trembled under bombardment, Reed looked at the surviving officers. Their faces were pale, tired, hopeless. "Sir, we've lost all orbital defenses," one whispered. "The Empire demands our surrender." Reed adjusted his torn suit jacket, brushed off the dust, and said quietly, "Tell them Earth doesn't surrender." The officers stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, they've destroyed half the planet." "I know," Reed replied. "But as long as one human still speaks, Earth still stands." Moments later, the bunker doors cracked open with a deafening sound. A group of alien soldiers entered, tall and armored, their glowing eyes scanning every corner. Behind them walked Commander Kryloth, the alien who had led the conquest of Earth. His silver armor reflected the burning light, and his voice carried arrogance and pride. "So this is humanity's last diplomat," Kryloth said, his voice echoing. "Your world is gone. Your people are dust. Your fleet lies in ruins. Surrender." Reed stood still, meeting his gaze without fear. "Is that what you call victory?" he asked, his tone calm and controlled. The alien commander tilted his head. "You are surrounded. Human, there is no escape, no army left to save you." Reed took a slow breath and said softly, "That's what you always think about us." Kryloth's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Reed stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. "You think destruction means defeat, but for humans, it only means survival, just changed shape." The alien commander laughed, a cruel, metallic sound. "You speak as if words will save you." "Words have saved us before," Reed answered, "and they will again." Outside, the last defense satellite fell from orbit, breaking into flames across the horizon. The alien soldiers activated their transmitters to send the final victory broadcast across the galaxy. "The human empire is no more," the message began. But before it could finish, Reed's voice cut through the noise, steady and unbroken. "This is Ambassador Reed Carter, of Earth," he said. "Remember this. Rule 1. Never count us out." For a moment, silence filled the air. Even the alien soldiers paused, not understanding the meaning but sensing the weight in his words. Then the transmission ended, and Kryloth smirked. "Empty defiance," he muttered. "Your species will be forgotten." Reed looked at him and whispered, "You've already lost, you just don't see it yet." That night, the Galactic Empire celebrated its grand victory. Across alien worlds, fireworks exploded in alien skies, toasts were raised, and songs were sung about the fall of Earth. But somewhere deep underground, in the ruins of the old world, a single coded message was sent to every surviving human outpost. It read, "Rule 1, never count us out." And in that moment, something invisible shifted in the galaxy. Hope, like a spark in the dark, began to burn again. While the Empire rejoiced, humanity began to move quietly beneath the ashes. They were broken, scattered, bleeding, but not done. Because Rule 1 was never just a phrase, it was the truth of who they were. And soon, the galaxy would remember why humans were feared not for their strength, but for their will. Reed Carter stood alone in the silent bunker, watching the stars through a cracked ceiling. He whispered once more, just for himself, "Never count us out." Weeks passed since the fall of Earth. The stars above looked peaceful again, but beneath that calm light, the ashes of humanity still glowed. The Galactic Empire believed the war was over, the humans defeated, their will broken. But they didn't understand what kind of species humans were. They didn't know that in silence, we grow dangerous. Far beneath the ruined cities, in collapsed tunnels and shattered subways, survivors gathered. Men, women, and children who refused to die quietly. Some were soldiers without weapons, some were engineers, scientists, and medics. And at the heart of it all was one man, Ambassador Reed Carter. The same man the aliens mocked during their victory broadcast. He sat beside a dying fire in an underground bunker, planning something the galaxy would never expect. "Sir," one of the survivors whispered, "we have no ships, no armies, not even power. What can we do now?" Reed looked up slowly, his face pale, but his eyes alive. "We do what humans have always done," he said. "We adapt, we learn, and we wait for our moment." He opened a broken communicator, rewired with stolen alien tech, and smiled faintly. "We send a message, not with weapons, but with words." That night, his voice traveled across abandoned frequencies. It echoed through the ruins, carried by static and hope. "To any humans still alive," he said, "remember Rule 1, never count us out." Those 6 words became more than a phrase. They became a heartbeat. Graffiti appeared on burned walls, scratched into metal panels, carved into stone. Children whispered it as they slept, soldiers painted it on their armor. Even when the aliens found it and erased it, it came back stronger. Every time they tried to silence it, the message multiplied. The Galactic Empire dismissed it as human superstition, but their soldiers began to notice strange things. Supply ships vanished between planets. Communication towers failed without reason. Small bases exploded mysteriously, leaving behind nothing but those words. Rule 1. The aliens started calling it the Whisper Campaign. They couldn't find its source, couldn't understand how something so small spread so far. But Reed knew. It wasn't a campaign, it was a promise. He worked with small groups of engineers who learned to rebuild alien drones. They hijacked their systems, turning them into carriers for human messages. Every drone sent into space repeated one phrase before self-destructing. "We are still here." It became a haunting echo in the dark void of space. The aliens thought it was noise, a malfunction, until one of their fleets disappeared near Saturn. Later, the wreckage was found floating silently, with Rule 1 burned into its hull. In their arrogance, the aliens ignored the signs. They had crushed a planet, but they hadn't crushed its spirit. They had won the war, but lost control of fear. Their soldiers began hesitating, wondering if humanity truly was finished, because every rumor they heard said the same thing. Humans were coming back. Reed watched these whispers grow from the shadows. He never raised a weapon, never gave a speech of anger. He simply kept sending signals, one after another, each message more defiant than the last. He knew humanity's strength wasn't in numbers or technology. It was in persistence, the refusal to disappear even when forgotten. One night, as Reed looked at the stars through a cracked tunnel opening, he whispered to himself, "They think silence means surrender." He smiled faintly and added, "They've never listened closely enough to hear what silence hides." Behind him, the survivors were already preparing new codes, new messages. Their hope wasn't loud, but it was spreading, quiet, unstoppable, alive. The Galactic Empire would never understand that kind of resistance, because for them, power meant control. For humans, power meant endurance. And in that endurance, something ancient was awakening. The aliens had celebrated victory too early. They didn't realize that every scar they gave humanity only made it stronger. The whisper that started from one man was now a storm waiting to rise. Far away, in the darkness between stars, the human colonies that had escaped began hearing the signal too. It reached Mars, Titan, even the frozen stations of Neptune. The words burned into every radio, every heart. Rule 1, never count us out. And for the first time since the invasion, the galaxy began to feel uneasy. Something was coming, quiet, patient, and very, very human. Months passed since the last battle of Earth. The Galactic Empire had turned the once blue planet into a monument of their dominance. Alien fleets hovered in orbit like vultures guarding a corpse. They called it the Silent World, a warning to any species that might dare resist. To the aliens, humanity was finished, a brief noise in history now silenced forever. But far beneath their scanners, the real story was only beginning. In the cold tunnels under Old London, the resistance had grown. Hundreds of small human groups were now connected through secret frequencies, each one following the same message that Reed Carter had spoken. Rule 1. Never count us out. They didn't have weapons, but they had intelligence, cunning, and unity. Reed had transformed despair into coordination and whispers into a war plan. From Mars to the icy moons of Jupiter, human survivors began using stolen alien tech. They decoded the Empire's data channels, turned enemy drones into messengers. Every ship they hijacked became a ghost ship, sent into enemy space carrying traps and viruses. The aliens called it malfunction, but the truth was much simpler. Humanity was learning faster than ever. In one corner of the galaxy, Commander Kryloth watched reports of missing patrols. His pride turned into irritation, his irritation into fear. "Who dares attack us?" he roared, slamming his clawed hand onto the console. His officers exchanged nervous glances. "There are no confirmed enemies, sir," one stammered. "Just echoes, empty signals, and explosions." Kryloth growled. "Echoes don't destroy battleships." But deep inside, he already knew who it was. Humans. Meanwhile, on a frozen moon called Epsilon 9, Reed and a small team worked tirelessly. They had captured a damaged alien scout ship, rebuilt it piece by piece. It wasn't powerful, but it was invisible to alien sensors. Reed called it the Ghostlight. It would carry their first real strike against the Empire. Not to destroy, but to humiliate. Because Reed knew, humiliation could shake an empire more than destruction ever could. That night, the Ghostlight slipped into orbit above an alien mining colony. The colony supplied fuel to half the Empire's fleets. Instead of bombs, they released a coded signal, one designed to hack the Empire's Central Command broadcast. Within minutes, every alien communication screen across the galaxy flickered, and then came the voice. A calm, human voice, familiar and terrifying. "This is Ambassador Reed Carter of Earth." It said. "You forgot Rule 1. Silence followed. A silence that screamed louder than any explosion. For the first time since the invasion, alien officers panicked. Reports poured in. Bases going dark, soldiers refusing orders, colonies questioning the victory. The humans had done what no weapon could. They had broken the illusion of control. The Empire realized that the humans they buried were now ghosts haunting their machines. Kryloth sat in his command chamber, watching the chaos spread. He clenched his fists, his pride cracking like glass. "Find him," he snarled. "Find that human." But Reed was already gone, disappearing into the black of space. His voice echoed one last time through every alien frequency. "Rule 1. He repeated softly. "Never count us out." Across the occupied worlds, something dangerous began to grow. Even among alien soldiers, whispers spread, stories of humans who survived fire, of outposts destroyed by invisible hands, of ghost ships that spoke before vanishing. The phrase Rule 1 became a curse, a prophecy, a legend. And as fear took root, Reed smiled quietly in the shadows. He knew this was only the beginning. Humanity didn't need to win right away, they just needed the galaxy to remember who they were. A species that refused extinction. A species that turned loss into fuel, pain into progress, and fear into fire. Every second the Empire spent doubting was another second humanity used to prepare. In the end, the Galactic Empire's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating humanity's weapons. It was underestimating humanity's will. Because while the aliens ruled the skies, humans ruled something far greater. The idea that could never be killed. And now that idea had a name. Rule 1. As the ghost light drifted silently through the stars, its lights dim against the void, Reed looked at the earth-shaped pendant hanging from his neck and whispered to the darkness. "You thought we were done," he said softly. "But you forgot the rule." He smiled, the stars reflected in his tired eyes. "Never count us out." The Galactic Empire still claimed victory, but its tone had changed. The alien broadcasts that once boasted of conquest now carried traces of caution. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. Something was moving in the dark. Something small, invisible, and very human. Reed Carter sat inside the ghost light, orbiting a dead moon, staring at the stars. Every night he thought about Earth, about the billions lost, about the quiet promise he made. He knew humanity couldn't fight with ships and guns, not yet. But there were other weapons, words, and Reed knew how to use them better than anyone. The first whisper began in the outer colonies. A transmission disguised as a weather report carried one strange phrase. Rule 1, never count us out. At first, the aliens ignored it, dismissing it as human noise. But then it appeared again, on another planet, and another. Soon, alien soldiers began hearing human voices in their comms, faint, calm, repeating the same line. Some said they saw shadows moving in the fog of battlefields, leaving behind human symbols. Others said their machines refused orders whenever the phrase was spoken. Across the galaxy, confusion turned into paranoia. Every signal, every echo became suspicious. The Empire started censoring communications, locking down networks. But Reed had already built a new system, hidden inside the Empire's own. His messages traveled through alien satellites, bouncing across star systems faster than the Empire could stop them. Every message told a story, not of defeat, but of survival. It reminded the galaxy that humanity wasn't gone. We were adapting, watching, and waiting. Reed wasn't alone anymore. Aliens who had grown tired of the Empire's cruelty began to listen. Some secretly helped humans by spreading the message further. They didn't know the full plan, but they believed the words, Rule 1, a phrase that carried something rare in the cold void of space. Hope. And hope, Reed knew, was more dangerous than any bomb. Soon, entire outposts began turning against the Empire. A commander on the planet Velran defected after receiving one of Reed's messages. He broadcast it live to his troops, saying, "If humans can stand after extinction, what excuse do we have?" The Empire tried to silence him, but the clip spread across systems before they could. Within a week, 5 more colonies rebelled, not in the name of humans, but because they wanted to feel alive again. They wanted to believe that one voice could still change a galaxy. Reed listened to the chaos unfold from his small ship. He wasn't smiling, not out of pride, but out of understanding. He knew this wasn't victory yet. It was only the beginning of fear. And fear, he thought, was the first step to weakness. He told his team, "We're not here to destroy them. Not yet. We make them doubt. Doubt will eat them from the inside." One night, as the ghost light passed near an alien relay station, Reed sent a new message across all open channels. His voice calm, steady, almost kind. "You can erase our cities, but not our memory," he said. "You can take our planets, but not our persistence. Remember Rule 1, never count us out." Then he cut the transmission and disappeared before they could trace him. The next morning, the Empire's High Council met in panic. Reports of mutiny, desertions, and unrest filled the room. They argued, shouted, demanded answers. But the truth was simple. They were losing control of belief. And in any empire, belief was what held the stars together. Across the galaxy, children of alien species whispered human words at night. Soldiers painted human symbols on their armor for luck. The once proud Galactic Empire was now haunted by the ghost of humanity. A ghost that spoke softly, but carried the power to reshape everything. Reed stood by the window of his ship, watching the endless stars. He knew the time for silence would soon end. For now, the whispers were enough, because they were spreading faster than fire. The Empire had the guns, the fleets, the worlds. But humanity had something the aliens could never understand, the power of belief. And belief, when born from pain, could topple empires. As Reed looked into the dark, he whispered to himself again. The louder they silence us, the stronger the whisper becomes. He turned off the comms, closed his eyes, and smiled faintly. They celebrated too soon, he said softly. They still don't understand Rule 1. The Galactic Empire could no longer ignore the whispers. Every night, their communication towers crackled with human voices. Every morning, more soldiers vanished or deserted, leaving behind only one message, Rule 1. The words had spread across the stars like a virus. And for the first time, the mighty empire felt afraid. On the capital world of Velcora, the High Council met in silence. Their once proud leaders sat in the shadow of doubt. Admiral Kryloth slammed his claws on the table. "They are nothing but insects," he hissed. "Yet they poison entire systems with a few words." His second-in-command replied nervously, It's not just words, sir. It's belief. Kryloth growled. Then we crush their belief. Orders went out across the galaxy. Purge every world touched by the human message. Entire colonies were burned, cities destroyed, civilians executed for whispering the forbidden phrase. The Empire's fire scorched planets to erase the ghost of humanity. But the harder they tried, the louder the whispers grew. Meanwhile, deep in space, Reed Carter watched the destruction unfold on intercepted transmissions. His heart was heavy, but his voice remained calm. They're desperate, he said softly. And desperation means they're breaking. His team stared at him in silence. What now? One asked. We can't fight their fleets. Reed turned toward the stars and said, we don't fight them with guns. We fight them with truth. The next phase of his plan began. He hacked into the Empire's central broadcast network. For the first time since the war began, the galaxy saw a human face on their screens. Reed Carter appeared, tired, scarred, but unbroken. To the people of the galaxy, he said, you call us defeated, but look around you. Your rulers burn worlds because of a whisper. They fear what they cannot kill. Rule 1, never count us out. The broadcast lasted less than a minute before the Empire traced his signal. Kryloth's fleet jumped to Reed's location, surrounding his ship like a swarm. Ambassador Reed Carter, the alien commander's voice thundered through the comms. Your words end today. Reed looked at his crew, his voice calm. Then let them come, he said, because every end they give us becomes our beginning. Moments later, the Ghost Light was captured, its crew taken in chains to the capital. The Empire paraded Reed through the streets of Velcora as a trophy. Crowds of aliens gathered, jeering and mocking the fragile human. But Reed walked tall, eyes unflinching. When he reached the Grand Council chamber, Kryloth himself stood waiting. The hall was massive, filled with shimmering lights and alien banners of conquest. Kryloth smiled coldly. The last voice of humanity, he said. How small you look now. Reed lifted his head. Small? He whispered. Maybe. But small things have a way of surviving what giants cannot. The council laughed, echoing through the hall like thunder. Kryloth stepped closer. You spread rebellion, fear, and lies. Reed met his gaze, his voice low. I spread memory, he said. And you can't burn that. Kryloth raised his hand. You will speak to the galaxy one last time, he ordered. You will announce humanity's surrender. Reed was forced before 1,000 alien cameras. He stood still as the lights turned on. His face shone to every world. Speak, Kryloth commanded. Reed looked directly into the camera and smiled faintly. To everyone watching, he said softly, you already know what I'll say. He paused and then whispered, Rule 1, never count us out. The council shouted in fury. Soldiers moved to silence him. But it was too late. The transmission had already reached every corner of the galaxy. Hidden human networks awakened. Sleepers on alien worlds activated stolen tech. A chain of coded signals ignited across hundreds of systems. The Empire's ships began exploding, one after another. Their own satellites turned against them. Their command centers lost contact. The galaxy's night filled with fire and static. Kryloth turned toward Reed in disbelief. What have you done? He shouted. Reed's voice was calm, almost gentle. I told you, he said. Every end you give us becomes our beginning. And as the alarms blared, Reed smiled for the first time since the fall of Earth. The human whisper had become a roar, and the galaxy finally understood the truth behind Rule 1. The galaxy burned again, but this time, it wasn't humanity that screamed. It was the Galactic Empire. Their proud fleets, once symbols of domination, were now dying in silence. Systems went dark one after another, communication grids collapsed, and chaos spread through the stars like wildfire. All because of one human whisper that refused to die. Inside the shattered halls of the Velcora Council, alarms howled endlessly. Screens flickered red, data vanished, and terrified voices filled the command channels. The networks are infected, one alien officer cried. Our ships are fighting each other. Ambassador Reed Carter stood quietly in the center of it all, hands bound, but his eyes calm. He didn't need to speak. The universe was already saying his words for him. Far from Velcora, hidden human cells across dozens of planets activated the uprising plan. For years, they had been planting code deep inside the Empire's machines. The moment Reed spoke his last message, those codes came alive. Drones turned against their masters, targeting military installations and supply chains. Entire fleets fell into disarray as their navigation systems failed. What the Empire thought was peace had only been humanity's preparation. On Mars, red dust swirled as human survivors emerged from old bunkers. They raised the flag again, not of a nation, but of a species. On Titan, hidden engineers powered up stolen alien warships painted with human emblems. On the moons of Jupiter, prisoners broke free and took control of orbital cannons. Every world that once cried in silence now roared in defiance. Back on Velcora, Admiral Kryloth faced his greatest nightmare. His empire was crumbling from within. "You think this changes anything?" he spat at Reed. Reed looked up slowly. "No," he said. "It reminds you what never changed, humanity's will." Kryloth raised his weapon, fury shaking his claws. But before he could fire, the floor trembled violently. Explosions echoed through the capital, the lights dimmed, and from above came a deep, thunderous sound, the arrival of human ships. For the first time in years, the blue insignia of Earth shone over an alien sky. A fleet of reconstructed vessels appeared, some half-alien, some purely human. They weren't massive, but they were fierce, fast, and burning with vengeance. The message broadcasted from their lead ship was simple. "This is Earth's Echo Fleet. We never left." The Empire's forces tried to regroup, but panic had already infected them. Their soldiers hesitated, questioning orders, haunted by the fear that humanity was everywhere. Every time they jammed a human signal, another appeared. Every time they crushed a resistance cell, two more rose in its place. They were fighting ghosts, ghosts with purpose. Reed was freed by rebel soldiers who stormed the council chamber. They carried him through smoke and fire. As he looked at the chaos outside, he whispered, "It's not revenge." One soldier looked at him in confusion. "Then what is it, sir?" Reed smiled faintly. "Balance." The uprising wasn't about destroying the Empire. It was about forcing them to see. Humanity didn't want their worlds, their thrones, or their titles. They wanted their place back in the stars, earned through blood, sacrifice, and survival. Reed's voice echoed once more through the galaxy, carried by every hacked signal. "To every world that suffers, to every species under rule, remember Rule 1, he said. "We are not the first to rise, and we won't be the last." Across the Empire, oppressed alien races heard his words and began to fight. What started as a human rebellion had become a galactic awakening. The mighty rulers of Velcora realized too late. The flame they tried to crush had become a supernova, and it burned across the stars, unstoppable. As the dawn rose over the smoking capital, Reed stood on the balcony of a captured tower. Below him, the alien banners were torn and scattered. The air was thick with dust, light, and hope. He closed his eyes, hearing the distant chants of humans and aliens alike shouting one name, Rule 1. And for the first time since the fall of Earth, the human heart of the galaxy began to beat again. The tide had turned. The empire that once conquered worlds with fear now trembled under the weight of courage. Humanity had no home, no empire, no king. But they had something greater, a reason. And that reason echoed louder than any weapon could. Never count us out. The fires of rebellion still burned across the stars. But now, they burned as light instead of destruction. World after world broke free from the Galactic Empire's chains. And at the center of it all stood one human, Ambassador Reed Carter, the man who had once whispered hope in the ruins of Earth. Velcora, the once unbreakable capital of the Empire, was silent now. Its crystal towers lay cracked, its banners torn, its councils scattered like dust in the wind. The mighty Admiral Kryloth stood in the wreckage of his throne room, armor dented, pride shattered. Before him walked Reed, escorted by human and alien allies. No weapons, no crown, no army, just the calm of a man who had already won. Kryloth stared at him, hate burning in his eyes. "You destroyed my empire," he snarled. "You infected my people with your weakness." Reed shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We reminded them they were alive." The alien's claws clenched. "You think this is victory? You've brought only chaos." Reed looked out the shattered window at the rising sun. Chaos, he said softly, is just freedom learning to breathe again. All across the galaxy, transmissions played the same message, the human voice that started it all. To every being who ever thought they were too small to matter, it said. To every race crushed under fear, remember Rule 1, never count us out. Planets once silent now sang those words like an anthem. The phrase had crossed the line between species and stars. It was no longer just human, it was universal. The Galactic Empire, which had ruled for centuries, began to dissolve. Worlds formed alliances built not on fear, but on resilience. And through it all, Reed refused the title of hero. He simply called himself a messenger, a survivor who carried humanity's heart into the stars. Yet even heroes must face their ghosts. Kryloth raised his weapon one last time, his voice trembling. You should have surrendered when you had the chance. Reed looked at him, calm and unafraid. You still don't understand, do you? He said, stepping closer. Humans don't fight for power, we fight for meaning. He leaned closer and whispered the words that ended empires. Rule 1, never count us out. A beam of light burst through the window as the rising dawn flooded the chamber. The weapon in Kryloth's hand fell to the ground, the sound echoing like a final heartbeat. He lowered his head, defeated not by force, but by truth. Outside, the sky filled with ships, not warships, but fleets of rebuilding worlds. Human and alien together, working side by side to repair what arrogance had broken. Reed walked through the city streets, once symbols of oppression now alive with new hope. Children, human and alien, ran through the dust laughing. The same streets where his people once walked as slaves now echoed with unity. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both loss and peace. We lost our world, he whispered, but we found something greater, our purpose. Years later, the galaxy would tell stories of this time. They would speak of the war not as humanity's revenge, but as the awakening of 1,000 worlds. And every tale, every legend, would begin with the same line. When the galaxy forgot its heart, a human reminded them of Rule 1. Reed Carter never returned to Earth. He chose to remain among the stars, guiding the fragile alliance of free worlds. On the anniversary of the rebellion's victory, a monument was built where the Galactic Council once stood. It was simple, a single stone engraved with human words. Rule 1, never count us out. As Reed stood before it, wind rustling his worn coat, he closed his eyes. He remembered the faces of the fallen, the voices that refused to fade. He whispered softly to the stars. This isn't the end, it never was. And in that moment, the galaxy, vast, scarred, and beautiful, seemed to listen. Because humanity had not just survived, they had taught the universe something eternal. Empires fall, stars fade, but hope, the human kind of hope, never dies. And that was the true lesson of Rule 1. Never, ever count humanity out.